Ethan stood in the grand hall, his heart beating faster than ever before. The room was silent except for the echo of his footsteps on the marble floor. High windows let in bright sunlight that made the gold designs on the walls shine. He tried to steady his breath as he walked toward the throne. This was not a normal meeting. This was a moment he would remember for the rest of his life. He had traveled far to be here. Months of planning and days of waiting had led him to this place. The palace looked like a dream, with tall pillars, crystal chandeliers, and floors so clean they shone like water. He had met many people in his life, but none like the one he was about to meet. At the end of the hall stood the princess. Her name was Claire. She was dressed in a royal gown, white with silver edges, and a crown rested on her head. Her long brown hair fell over her shoulders. Her eyes were bright, but there was something in them that he could not understand. It was not fear, and it was not anger. It was something else. He walked slowly until he stood before her. He bowed, just as he had been told to do. When he lifted his head, her eyes met his. They were deep, as if holding secrets that no one could guess. He could feel every person in the hall watching him. The guards stood still like statues. The advisors whispered among themselves. He knew this handshake was important, but he did not know why. Claire stepped forward. Her steps were soft, but her presence filled the room. She raised her hand. He did the same. Their fingers touched, and then their hands joined. For a moment, time felt slow. His palm touched hers, and then it happened. She began to shake. It was not a small shake. Her hand trembled first, then her whole body. Her lips parted as if she wanted to speak, but no words came out. Her eyes widened and her face turned pale. Ethan froze. He had never seen anything like this. He wanted to ask if she was all right, but his voice would not come. He just held her hand, afraid to let go and afraid to hold on. The guards moved. They stepped closer, their hands on their swords. The advisors spoke louder now, their voices filled with worry. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. What had he done? Why was she reacting like this? He had followed every rule, every custom. He had done nothing wrong, but the look in her eyes said something else. Her breathing grew heavy, and she pulled her hand away as if his touch burned her. She took a step back, then another. Her crown shook on her head. The whispers in the hall turned into noise. Someone called for help. Two maids rushed forward to hold her, but she pushed them aside. Her gaze stayed on Ethan, sharp and full of meaning. It was as if she knew something about him that he did not know about himself. Hush! Ethan felt heat in his chest. His mind raced for answers, but there were none. He tried to speak, but the words stuck in his throat. He could only stand and watch as she turned and hurried toward a door at the back of the hall. The guards followed her. The advisors followed too, all shouting questions he could not hear. Soon the great doors closed and he was alone in the hall. The silence after the noise was heavy. He looked at his hand. It still felt warm from her touch. His thoughts spun like a storm. What had just happened? Why did she shake when he touched her? And why did her eyes look as if his touch had changed everything? He did not know the answers, but he knew one thing. His life had just changed in a way he could not yet understand. Ethan waited in the empty hall for what felt like hours. His mind kept going back to the look on Claire's face. Her wide eyes, her trembling hands, the way she ran as if his touch had burned her. None of it made sense. He had done nothing wrong, yet everyone acted like he had broken some sacred rule. The doors opened with a loud sound and two guards walked in. Their faces were hard, and their eyes never left him. One of them spoke in a firm voice, asking him to follow. Ethan did not argue. He knew he had no choice. They led him down a long corridor lined with red carpets and paintings of kings and queens. The silence between them was heavy. Every step made his heart pound harder. They stopped in front of a tall door and opened it. Inside was a room with dark wood walls and a single long table. Several men and women sat around it, their faces serious. Ethan recognized them as members of the Royal Council. At the far end of the table sat an older man with silver hair. His voice was calm but sharp when he spoke. "What did you do to her?" the man asked. Ethan felt his throat tighten. "Nothing," he said. "I just did what I was told. I greeted her like you asked me to." The council members exchanged looks. A woman with short hair leaned forward. "You touched her hand?" "Yes," Ethan said. She offered it, only shook her hand. Her eyes narrowed. and then she began to shake. Ethan nodded slowly. Yes, I don't know why. The older man tapped his fingers on the table. There is an old belief in this land, he said. A belief that should have stayed as nothing more than a story. It says that when the princess meets a man who can change the fate of the crown, she will tremble at his touch. Ethan stared at him. What does that mean? The man gave a hard smile. It means trouble. Before Ethan could ask more, the door opened again. Claire stepped inside. She looked calm now, but her eyes still held the same strange fire. The council members stood at once, bowing their heads. She walked past them and stopped in front of Ethan. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Leave us, Claire said. Her voice was soft but carried power. The council members hesitated, then slowly left the room. The guards followed, closing the door behind them. Now it was only the two of them. Ethan waited for her to speak. His hands were cold, and his heart was heavy with questions. Finally, she moved closer. Her voice was low when she spoke. I am sorry for what happened in the hall, she said. I did not expect this. Expect what? Ethan asked. She looked at his hand, then back at his face. The stories are true. They told me about the old words, but I never believed them. They said the first man who shakes my hand will decide the future of this kingdom. Either he will save it or destroy it. Ethan felt the air leave his lungs. That's just a story, he said. It can't be real, Claire shook her head. It is real enough for the council to fear you now. They think you are dangerous. Some of them will want to lock you away. Some may want to kill you. Ethan stepped back. What? I didn't ask for this. I came here to help. I wanted peace, not whatever this is. I know, she said. And for a moment, her eyes softened. But what happened cannot be undone. They saw what I felt, and so did I. What did you feel? Ethan asked. She hesitated, then whispered, Everything changed when you touched me. It was like the world moved under my feet. I do not know why, but I know you are part of something greater now, something that will decide the fate of my people. Ethan ran his hand through his hair. His life had turned into a storm in a single moment. He looked at her and saw both fear and trust in her eyes. Whatever this was, it was only the beginning. Night fell over the palace, and the halls grew quiet, but Ethan could not sleep. He sat on the edge of the bed in the small chamber they had given him, staring at the moonlight through the window. His mind was full of questions. What did the prophecy really mean? Why him? He had come here for peace talks, not to change the fate of a kingdom. He stood and walked to the window. From there, he could see the lights of the city far below, glowing like stars on the ground. It looked calm, but he knew trouble was close. Claire's words kept echoing in his head. Some of them will want to lock you away. Some may want to kill you. He could almost feel eyes watching him even now. The door creaked, and he turned fast. Claire stepped inside, her gown replaced by a simple cloak. Her hair was tied back, and her face looked tense. You should not be here, Ethan said in a low voice. Had to come, she whispered. We do not have much time. The council is meeting again tonight. They want to decide what to do with you. Ethan frowned. And what do they want? Some believe the old words, she said. They think if they kill you, the kingdom will be safe. Ethan felt a cold shiver run down his spine. That's insane. I didn't do anything, I know, she said quickly. But fear makes people blind. They think they can change the future by removing you. He took a deep breath. Then what do we do? Shh. She stepped closer, her eyes fixed on his. You must come with me. Now. If they find you here, you will not see the sunrise. Ethan looked at the door, then back at her. Where will we go? There's a hidden passage, she said. It leads outside the palace walls. From there, we can reach the old temple. It is the only place where we can find the truth about the prophecy. Ethan hesitated. Every part of him wanted to stay and fight to demand answers, but he knew this was not his land. If what she said was true, staying here meant death. He gave a short nod. Let's go. Claire moved quickly. She led him through dark hallways, past sleeping guards and closed doors. The palace that had looked so bright in the day now felt like a trap. Shadows stretched long across the floor, and every sound made Ethan tense. Finally, they reached an old wooden door at the end of a narrow corridor. Claire pushed it open, and a gust of cold air hit them. Behind the door was a stone staircase leading down into darkness. She lit a small lantern and handed it to Ethan. "Stay close," she said. They went down the stairs, their steps echoing in the narrow space. The air smelled of dust and old stone. At the bottom, they found a tunnel that stretched far ahead. The walls were rough, and water dripped from the ceiling. Ethan held the lantern high as they walked, the light casting long shadows on the walls. "Does anyone else know about this passage?" he asked. "My father showed me when I was a child," Claire said. "Said it was a way to escape if danger ever came to the crown. I never thought I would use it." They walked for what felt like an hour before they reached another door. Claire pushed it open, and they stepped into the night. The forest outside was dark, but the sky was full of stars. Ethan took a deep breath of the cold air. It felt like freedom, even if danger was still close behind. Claire looked at him, her face serious. "The temple is 2 miles from here. We must move fast. If they notice we are gone, they will send men after us." Ethan nodded. "Then let's keep moving." They started down a narrow path through the trees. The forest was silent except for the sound of their steps and the wind in the branches. Ethan felt the weight of everything pressing down on him. Prophecy, the council, the fear in Claire's eyes. He did not know what waited at the temple, but he knew one thing. There was no turning back now. The forest was dark, and the cold air bit at their skin as Ethan and Claire moved quickly along the narrow path. The only light came from the lantern in Ethan's hand, and even that seemed weak against the endless night. The trees stood tall and silent, their branches swaying like shadows that wanted to reach out and stop them. Every sound made Ethan look over his shoulder. He could not shake the feeling that someone was following them. "How much farther?" he asked in a low voice. "Not far," Claire said. "The temple is beyond the river. Once we cross, we will be safe." Ethan doubted that. Nothing felt safe now. He gripped the lantern tighter and kept moving. His mind was still full of questions, but he knew this was not the time to ask. Right now they had only one goal: stay ahead of the men who might already be chasing them. Suddenly Claire stopped. She held up her hand for silence. Ethan froze and listened. At first he heard only the wind. Then came the sound of hooves, distant but clear. Horses. Someone was coming fast. "They are behind us," Claire whispered. Her face was pale in the lantern light. "We need to move faster." They broke into a run. The path twisted through the trees and roots reached out like traps under their feet. Ethan stumbled but kept going. His heart pounded like a drum in his chest. The sound of the horses grew louder. Shouts followed, sharp and angry. It had been discovered. "Where is the river?" Ethan called. "Close," Claire shouted back. "I can hear it." A few moments later, they broke through the trees and saw the river ahead, its dark water shining in the moonlight. It was wide and fast, the current strong. A narrow wooden bridge crossed it, but it looked old and weak. "Will it hold?" Ethan asked. "It has to," Claire said. She ran to the bridge without another word. Ethan followed, the boards creaking under their feet as they ran across. The river roared below, waiting to swallow them if the bridge gave way. Behind them, the sound of horses was almost upon them. They reached the other side and did not stop. Claire led him up a slope through more trees until they reached a clearing where the ruins of the old temple stood. Stone pillars rose from the ground like broken teeth. Moss covered the walls and the roof was gone, leaving the place open to the night sky. It looked like time had forgotten it, but to Claire, it was a place of hope. "This is it," she said, breathing hard. "The temple of the first crown." Ethan looked around, his chest heaving, and what now? Claire walked to the center of the ruins, where a stone altar stood. She placed her hands on it and closed her eyes. "The truth about the prophecy is written here. My father told me once, long ago." Ethan walked to her side, his eyes scanning the trees. He expected the riders to appear at any moment. "I don't have time for stories," he said. "They are coming." Claire opened her eyes and looked at him. "This is not just a story. If we do not know the truth, we cannot stop what is coming." Before Ethan could reply, a voice rang out from the trees. "Stop." He turned fast. A group of men on horseback stood at the edge of the clearing, their swords shining in the moonlight. The leader raised his hand, and the riders spread out, blocking every path of escape. Claire stepped closer to Ethan. Her voice was low, but strong. "You have to trust me." Ethan stared at her, then at the men closing in. There was no way to fight them all. He nodded once. "Do you need me to do?" She gripped his hand, her eyes locked on his. "Stand with me." The riders moved closer, their faces hard and cold. Ethan stood beside her, his pulse racing. Whatever the truth was, whatever this prophecy meant, they were about to face it together. The night held its breath as the first sword was drawn. The night air was cold and sharp as Ethan faced the line of riders. Their horses snorted and pawed the ground, and the men held their swords high. The leader, a tall man with a dark cloak, spoke with a hard voice. "Step away from her," he said. "This is not your fight." Ethan felt Claire's hand tighten on his. He looked at her, then back at the men. His heart pounded, but he stood his ground. "I'm not leaving," he said. The leader's eyes narrowed. "Then you will die with her." He raised his sword and shouted an order. The riders began to move forward, their blades flashing in the moonlight. Before they could reach the altar, Claire stepped onto the stone and lifted her head high. Her voice rang out clear and strong. "Stop," the riders slowed. Something in her tone made them hesitate. Claire placed her hand on the altar, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then the stone beneath her hand began to glow faintly, a soft white light spreading across the carvings that covered its surface. The air seemed to hum, and Ethan felt the hair on his arms rise. The leader frowned and urged his horse forward. "What is this trick?" he demanded. "It is not a trick," Claire said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with fire. "This is the truth of the crown." Hush. She turned to Ethan and held out her hand. "Come here." Ethan stepped forward without thinking, placed his hand in hers, and the glow on the altar grew brighter, spreading out in lines like rivers of light. The riders pulled their horses back in fear as the ground shook slightly under their feet. Words appeared on the stone carved by light itself. Ethan could not read them, but Claire's eyes moved quickly over the lines. When she spoke, her voice was full of strength. The prophecy was never about fear, she said. It was about unity. It said the kingdom would be saved when the air and a man from beyond the mountains joined hands in trust. Not war, not blood, trust. The leader's face twisted in anger. "Lies," he shouted. "The council will never accept this." Claire stepped down from the altar, still holding Ethan's hand. "The council does not rule the truth," she said. "The crown does, and the crown calls for peace." The men on horseback shifted nervously. Some looked unsure now, their eyes on the glowing altar. The leader raised his sword again, but before he could speak, one of his own men rode forward and blocked him. "She speaks the old words," the man said. "I have heard them before. They are true." The leader stared at him in rage, but more riders began to lower their weapons. Doubt spread among them like fire. Finally, with a growl, the leader pulled his horse around. "This is not over," he said. Then he turned and rode back into the forest, the rest following slowly behind. Silence fell over the ruins. The glow on the altar faded, leaving only the cold stone behind. Ethan let out a breath he didn't know he had been holding. His hand was still in Claire's, and he could feel her tremble, not from fear this time, but from relief. "It's over," she said softly. "For now," Ethan replied. He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the weight of everything she had carried. What happens next? Claire smiled faintly, the first real smile he had seen from her. "We go back," she said. "We show them the truth. We build something better than what they had before." Ethan nodded slowly. "And if they don't listen, then we make them listen," she said. There was no doubt in her voice now. She was a queen, and he could see it clearly. They stood together in the ruins, the stars bright above them. The danger was not gone, but the path was clear. The prophecy had spoken, and their hands had sealed its meaning. Whatever came next, they would face it together.